Hey everybody, it's your old pal John. I am back. I'm trying to knock out two or three of these that you guys gave me. And here is the next one that I wanted to do. 10 most annoying habits of American tourists in Europe. I know this guy, if I'm not mistaken, with the beard. I've seen something else. But, let's get into it because Americans are an easy target. So let's hit it.
Some of the ways American tourists annoy Europeans when they come here for a visit. And the thing is, a lot of the annoyances I want to talk about, these aren't things that just American tourists do. These are things that tourists from all over the world do. However, since English is the de facto tourist language in Europe, it kind of gets lumped together that anybody speaking English being annoying must be an American, or they could be an Italian, they could be Swiss.
It's okay. Call them an American. I don't mind. I'll carry that too.
They could be Spanish, they could be from anywhere, okay? And I
All
think
right.
the first kind of annoyance I want to bring up is just the being loud. And being loud, but being loud
Okay, I kind of saw that one coming. Not going to lie.
and not aware of your surroundings. Nobody cares if you're loud when you're on the beach, you're having a good time, or you're at a club. No. It's when you're at a restaurant and you're like shouting your love for Athens or how uncomfortable the beds were at that hotel, and you're just being
true.
loud. Like,
Yeah.
that's just it. When you go around Europe, you'll notice there's not a lot of loud people. Yes, when you go to Spain, there's boisterous, there's Italians. Yes, there are those. But in general, when you're going out to eat, you're not expressing everything in 10 decibels higher than usual. And this is one thing, I know I've made this mistake too, is it seems like when we travel, our voices just get louder and louder. So do be aware of that, because if you're in restaurants or you're out and about or you're at museums, you want to kind of tone down the volume because that annoys people. And especially if you're on public transportation. I mean, there's trains in many countries here in Europe that actually have a quiet train where you're not supposed to talk. And so if you hop on
Oh,
and start
yeah.
talking on your phone, or
I didn't know you had a quiet train. That's pretty cool. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe Americans should consider doing more of that. By the way, Americans speak loudly because we're all deaf from shooting guns. That's my theory.
even better, talk on your phone with a speakerphone, yeah, that's a bonus annoyance anywhere in the world. If you talk on the speakerphone, please don't do that. No one else wants to hear about your constipation problem in Portugal, all right? So do be aware of that. So tone down the volume, you'll be okay. And kind of going along with that, another thing that annoys people is
Yep, my Afghan family, the refugee family that I'm helping, they do that a lot. Everyone's on speakerphone. Everyone's always on FaceTime. And then they put me on FaceTime, and I'm like, please don't. So it's not just, I guess, Americans.
when you kind of complain when things don't work out exactly like you expect, or everything's not perfect, like just like it back home. That insults people, because basically what you're saying is, oh, your culture here,
Your
and
culture
your country here
sucks.
sucks, and ours is so much better. And you have to realize this, you're in a new country, you're in a new place, and things do work a little bit differently. Because I have heard people complain, oh, the metros are so full. I'm like, well, yeah, you're in Paris during rush hour. People have to get to work. That's part of life.
And not everybody uses a car like Americans.
There was a video that went viral a few weeks ago about this lady that was complaining, like, oh, they show these beautiful pictures of the Amalfi Coast, but they don't tell you how you have to take a train and then a bus and then a ferry, and then there's all these people there. Well, yeah, shocking. You have to travel, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
those kind of complaining things, that kind of annoys people when you're here. And yes, there are annoyances that annoy them. Dog poop on the street annoys everybody. But the complaining kind of thing, the kind of comparison, putting them down. And this is something that other Europeans do. I see German tourists traveling around to Portugal, Spain, or Eastern Europe, and they definitely look down their nose at them like, oh, how are these things not working like back in Germany? So it's not just an American thing, but
That's very much my mother. She'll do that. She's been traveling. She's at that age where she wants to travel the world. I think it's great. And say goodbye to my inheritance. But I mean, she's been all over the place, and I can see when she comes, or I can hear when she comes back, where things are not as easily accessible. Who knew it would be really hard to get to Antarctica? You'd think by now they'd have that figured out.
just the complaining overall, you can complain, but keep it amongst yourselves in your hotel room.
Yep.
Don't be complaining to the locals. And another way you can really annoy the locals is really basically like if you've got too much luggage or you're not being aware of your surroundings again, but in terms of space, that means blocking the metro entrance or blocking the door of the metro, or having all your luggage blocking the whole sidewalk so people can't get by. I mean, people are still
Yeah.
living, have to do things. And when I see tour groups that are just like literally, it's like almost like they put their arms out like this to try to take up as much of the space as possible. Of
Yeah.
course it's going to annoy people. So if you're going to be in a tour group, stand to the side. I mean, you don't get the entire street. You don't get the entire sidewalk. People need to get to work, so be aware of that, because That's why some people really, really don't like tour groups, because a lot of the tour guides, they don't care about people in that community. All they care about is making their tourists that are off from their tour from the cruise ship happy, because they're the ones that are going to tip them, going to give them
Yeah.
money. That's their job. So do be aware of that.
I've seen people in the U.S. Doing tours like that, and I mean the same is true here in America. So that's just for tourists in general. Well, he said that at the beginning.
Because it really comes down to just being selfish. I mean, we're all selfish people. That's
Yeah.
what it is being human. You are selfish, but when you travel, trying to tone it down a little bit, because that's going to help you blend in better, but also have a better chance of making friends when you travel. Now, another thing that you know as Europeans when you travel, and this is not, again, not just American tourists, but lots of tourists, when they wander out in the middle of the street to get that perfect picture with the Eiffel Tower or the Brandenburg Gate or wherever, and you'll see people literally like wandering out to the middle of the Champs-Elysees to get their picture like this, or to hold the Eiffel Tower, or to get the Acropolis, and they really are putting themselves in danger. Like, you realize one of the most dangerous parts of travel is car accidents. I think that's one of the, if not the highest, the number 2 highest reason why tourists get killed when they travel is car accidents. And so if you're out there trying to get that perfect
makes
picture in
sense.
the middle of the street, yeah, you know what? If you're here in Greece, you're gonna die. Like,
That's awesome. I should ask my wife about that because she was in Greece. I haven't been there yet, but that's true. I didn't even think about that. I certainly am guilty of, standing out in the middle of the traffic. I'm thinking of specifically Santiago, Chile, and that was really bad. It was really bad, and it was really stupid. It was one of the first times I traveled, though.
people are just gonna boom knock you over. So don't do that, because that's what people are like, what the heck are you doing? Like, I see the locals like ripping their hair out when people are trying to walk across the circle around the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. There's stairs to go down. And that's just it. Some of these pictures you take that are dangerous, there's spots you can take it without being dangerous. There's a whole huge park behind the Eiffel Tower you can take pictures from. The Brandenburg Gate, the other side, there's actually a pedestrian square you can stand at and get your pictures. So think about those things, because you're putting yourself in danger, but also those drivers out
true.
there, you're putting them in danger too. Now, the next annoyance that happens with American tourists is when they only speak
Notice how he went right to American tourists again? We know who he's targeting, so don't sugarcoat this by trying to say it's everybody else, all tourists.
English. Now, I'm not saying Americans should speak tons of languages, because all those things that people say, well, Europeans all speak 5 or 6 languages, that's a bunch of BS. I've traveled all around Europe. I've lived around Europe. I lived here for 12 years, multiple countries. Yes, a lot of people will speak the local language and in English. But the ones that are like, oh no, they speak French and Spanish and Portuguese and German and English and...
Okay, I get where he's going with this. So here's one of the things is America's kind of a country in itself, the United States. Once you're done traveling that's sort of like you can get you can get the desert, you can get the mountains, you can get the beaches, you can get anything you want here in the US. And when we look at Europe, we see something the same size with, what is it, like, 100 different languages with sub-languages. I mean, it's got to be more than that, maybe 400. And, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone from Great Britain speaks French, or at least knows some French, and French knows English. But because of history and a bunch of other things, a whole lot of people in the world generally agree that English is the spoken language or the universal language. So a lot of Americans this is almost condescending to think about this, but it's like they just assume that everybody speaks English because it's the national language, so we don't have to bother learning other languages. Very weird, very weird. But at the same point, I kind of see it.
to Romanish and some Luxembourgish. Yeah, no, those are the Luxembourgers. Those are the Swiss. You go to Spain. The Spain speak Spanish. Some speak some English. You go to Portugal.
And Catalan?
Yes, there's a lot of English there, and some Spanish, but there's not a lot of other things. You go to Italy. You're going to need to learn some Italian when you're there. And so I'm not like harping on anyone for not knowing the language. It's the not trying.
You got to make
Because honestly,
the effort.
just Evharisto, which is thank you here in Greece, will go a long way. I mean, honestly, wherever you go, learn thank you and cheers, and everybody's gonna love you. I mean, hi, thank you, and cheers. You might get free raki or free uso here in Greece just because of that, right? So
That's so true. When you go to a country, I feel that you should immerse yourself in there. Immersion. You go, and that's how I learned Spanish. It was you learn the basics, and you practice, you get as good as you can get, and then you go there. And people, I think, appreciate that you're trying to speak their language. And you know what? Any person with like one language, you could pick up a whole bunch of other languages, like the Romance languages. Once you know one, you get the way people speak in the Romance languages. Now, other ones like Arabic, Dari, things like that, that's going to take me years, but you just got to get into it, and you'll be able to figure out what some of the words are and check out people's body language too. I mean, you can start to understand that. It's not rocket science. It's laziness.
Just know that trying some of those languages go a long way, because if you just start out in English and then a bonus upsetting people is that just speaking louder when they don't understand you, that gets things worse, okay? So just a few words, because they'll know you don't speak it by the way you say "Haristo," thank you. Like, I say it badly, but it's close enough. They're like, look at you, funny American, trying. You want
Trying.
some Uzo? I got some for you, buddy. You need some meatos?
He puts it out on the floor, on the road for him to eat
these
off.
things really don't annoy them a lot. It's not like it's going to cause you any fights, but these are little things you can do and be aware of so you can be a better traveler when you're here. And when you've been here, I think another annoyance you might think about is when you say, I've been to Europe, when all you've done is like a weekend in London or you spent a week in Paris. Look, it's like if you go to the U.S., someone goes to the U.S., say, oh, I've been to the U.S. I went to New York City.
Right.
I went to Orlando. I'm like, yeah, New York City's cool. Orlando is Orlando, but does that truly represent all of the U.S.?
That's an excellent point. That is such an excellent point. I've said like, oh yeah, I've been to Europe. Well, where have you been? I've been to London. I've been to Madrid, Alicante. I've been to, and you start listing off all these different places, and that's it. For me, it's like, I don't know, 4 or 5. And I always tell people, hey, I've been to Europe. Like, I've physically been and put my foot on the land, but have I been everywhere? No. If you've been to the U.S., trust me, here in Pennsylvania, we're a lot different than the people in Texas, California, Florida, Michigan, Maine, New York City, even though it's like 45 minutes away. We're very different people. That's one thing that is a problem and actually a good thing.
No, we have all kinds of different, topography, geography, people, food, all kinds of stuff. And here in Europe, it's even 10 times that because you have so many different cultures, so many different countries. So a visit to Poland is completely different than a visit to Portugal. A visit to Norway is completely different to here in Naflio. And by kind of lumping them all together, it kind of cheapens their cultural feelings and it makes you look bad. So be like, oh yeah, I've been to France, I've been to Paris. You know, until you really explore a lot, you'll start to see, wow, there is a lot of difference. It's not just one Europe.
And I bet you Americans are not going to understand this concept. Just because of our almost educated narcissism. They will not pick up on this. They'll just say, oh, I've been to Europe. It didn't even occur, and I say this because it didn't occur to me until he just said it. It's a good point. It's a great point. And all you have to do is say, yeah, because you go to the U.S., you can't go to all the places, of course.
There's a lot of different Europes out there, okay? And now another thing I think is important for those of you that are proud of your European heritage when you come here, and that is sometimes in some countries really promoting your 100% Greek heritage or your 100% Irish heritage might backfire. Because you're coming, you're thinking, yes, I'm going to the old country. I'm seeing where Yaya and Papuli were from. I'm going back to see where my grandfather, great-great-grandfather left from Dublin and how he got here. Yes, you're really proud of that. But the locals here, they do not see you as a Greek. They do not see you as an Irish, a true Irish person. They see you as someone with an Irish background that's here on vacation.
And that's fair to say, because in the United States, I was just telling a friend of mine that if you're from France and you go somewhere else, you're still French. If you are from Great Britain and you now live in the United States, well, people are going to always say, well, you're from Great Britain. It's your origin country. The thing about the United States is you can come to live in America. And once you get your citizenship, you are American. You can say your origins are from another country. But in America, we all believe that, this is the one country, maybe like Canada too, where you can go to and you can become part of the country immediately. So, like my Afghan refugee family, they would, I would say, maybe in about 10 years or so, when he's able to get his citizenship and the family is, then you think of them as just Americans. They're just immigrants. And there's a difference between a refugee and an immigrant at that point. So,
Oh, you're a Greek American that's coming here to spend a month of the summer. Because I'm going to tell you right now, coming to Greece for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks in the summertime on vacation, making U.S. money or Australian money or Canadian money, is it the same thing as growing up here, having to live through the austerity measures in the early 2000s? It's a whole different ballgame. In Ireland, there's a lot of resentment because, like, look, just because your 5 times back generation grandparents were from Ireland doesn't mean you understand what it means to be Irish. You weren't here during the Troubles. You don't understand those things. And that can cause some resentment. Now, it's not everywhere. I know for me personally, when I found out there's a little bit of me that was Lithuanian, I just brought up to my friends, oh yeah, there's like 5% Lithuanian in my family. And all my Lithuanian friends were like, yes, you're one of us. And so it is different places you go. So it might be something you want to be aware of. Now, another thing that might upset your
Americans accept it really well.
It gets to that point eventually is one, you might notice that sometimes they'll ask you questions like, so why are so many Americans fat? Well, I am fat. It's because I have lack of self-control. That's very simple. But they'll point out, oh, you Americans, all you eat is fast food. All you eat is junk food.
Oh, no.
And that's not what gets them mad. What gets them mad is when you point out, it's funny. When I walk by the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the KFCs and the Taco Bells in Spain, in Portugal, in Greece, in Germany, they're not full of American tourists. They're full of Germans. They're full of Bulgarians. They're full of Maltese. It's the locals that are eating there too. And Europeans are getting a little bit more supersized, not like us supersized, but they're getting a little bit bigger too. And that sometimes irks them when you point out that, look, it's not just Americans that eat junk food. Other places do as well. No.
Okay, yes about that, but at the same point, Americans tend to be more rotund. We do, because I don't know, and I'll probably say it's a higher standard of, no, it's not a higher standard of living. That's not right. Food is everywhere. That's right. Food is everywhere, and people eat out a lot. So we wouldn't go to the pub. We would go to one of the many food chains, and we'd drive up to 20, 30 minutes to go somewhere to have dinner. And then we drive back home. And I think the average person, I don't know, probably eats out once or twice, maybe once a week. And it's not going to be like a small amount of pub food. It's going to be like a honkin' burger or a steak or something like that. And Americans tend to be that way. And then Monday morning we eat the salad or Monday.
Another thing I've seen, this is one thing that any tourist does this, it's really not a good thing, is really disrespecting monuments and disrespecting cultural heritage in different countries. Because I've been places where people are doing their duck-face selfies in front of concentration camps. What the hell is wrong with you? Like those kind of things. Or people that are playing parkour on the Jewish Memorial in Berlin, and they're like, well, the artist wants it to be lived on. Really? Come on. I mean, this isn't just something American tourists do. This is something any tourist does. So be respectful when you go around. Don't be making a fool, especially in very solemn locations when there's memorials or places where people have died or battlefields. I mean, it's a very important thing for a lot of people, and it will insult people sometimes when you do that. And then as an American, I think there's one kind of important thing.
I've heard about this. I actually think it's not just Americans. I actually think this happens to other people because it happens here in the States. Tourists come and, when there's graffiti on something. I would believe that Americans do it more than most people because, I mean, look at the one guy in like North Korea. Like that's like the one place you would be like totally observant. And he got like arrested, sent to a hard labor camp. And I forget why, but then on the flight home, he died. There are real consequences, and Americans do not get that. They have this, a lot of them have a holier than thou kind of thing.
You need to know that will upset some Europeans no matter what you do, and that's just the fact that you're American. Look, it doesn't matter what political party you're for. It doesn't matter political parties at all. There's people that don't like what the U.S. does, and so they will take that out on you. Even if you have nothing to do with it, it's just a fact of life. So be aware of that. And that's one thing you'll see is sometimes the locals know more about politics in your country than you do.
All right, and I'm going to leave it here because that man is right on. A lot of Americans think they know what they're talking about, and they don't. We're a very divisive society, especially now with social media and people who know psychology in terms of dividing people. and that's a huge problem. But yeah, all right, I'm just gonna stop right there. I'll talk to you all later, and have a good one. Leave a comment down below.
And I'm not just talking to the
Whoops.
U.S. I'm talking.
Wrong button.